Have you ever wondered why some people seem irresistibly magnetic, while others struggle to form genuine emotional connections? Love, an enigma spanning eras, cultures, and languages, can feel like an unsolvable mystery. But what if there were just two deep, universal reasons why someone falls in love with you? In this video, we'll explore the invisible foundations that make someone's heart beat for you. Not the superficial cliches, but the archetypal forces at work in the unconscious. Through the lens of Carl Jung's analytical psychology, you'll discover why these two reasons are so powerful and how to recognize them in your own emotional journey. Get ready for a profound journey toward the hidden truth behind romantic relationships. If you believe that love begins in the unconscious, comment below. I choose to know myself in order to love truly. When we say someone falls in love with you for only two reasons, we're entering a realm beyond surface behavior. We're touching the deepest roots of the unconscious. For Jung, love is often a projection, an internal image, shaped by archetypes and past experiences, projected onto another person. In this sense, the other becomes a canvas onto which we project parts of ourselves that remain unintegrated. The first reason someone falls in love with you, then, is because you unconsciously represent something that this person has lost or never recognized in themselves, their unintegrated shadow or repressed animus. The second reason is tied to the archetypal drive of individuation, Jung's process of becoming who you truly are. When someone sees in you a bridge to their own personal fulfillment, even unconsciously, love arises as a transformative force. In this case, you don't just represent something that's missing, you embody what inspires growth. Here, love becomes a catalyst for an inner journey, not merely an emotional desire. These two reasons, projection of hidden aspects and the individuation drive, explain why some connections feel so intense. It's not just about affinity or attraction, but a deep call from the psyche to evolve through the other. Love, then, reveals itself as both a mirror and a gateway. On a conscious level, we tend to believe we fall in love because of someone's qualities, actions, or specific traits. However, from Jung's perspective, falling in love is often a profoundly unconscious phenomenon driven by projection. Jung defined projection as attributing our own psychic contents to another. In the realm of love, this means what we feel for someone often has less to do with who they really are and more with what they represent within our psyche. When someone falls in love with you, what they're seeing might actually be an idealized image, a construct that doesn't stem from your true essence, but from their unconscious needs. You become a mirror in which they see their anima or animus, the inner feminine or masculine archetypes yet to be integrated. In this scenario, the other is imbued with profound archetypal meanings: the woman as purity, the nurturing mother, the seductive enchantress, the man as hero, the protective father, the mysterious lover. This idealization is so powerful that it creates an intense emotional bond, making it feel like you've found your soulmate. But when the projection begins to fade, which inevitably happens over time and with closer contact, the reality of the other sets in. Often this leads to frustration, as the person no longer matches the idealized image. At this point, many relationships hit a crisis. The passion cools, and what remains is an opportunity. Either the bond deepens consciously, with mutual acceptance and integration, or it dissolves under the weight of broken expectations. It's crucial to understand that projecting isn't wrong. In fact, projection is a natural stage in romantic encounters and serves as a starting point for self-discovery. The problem lies in staying trapped in the illusion, believing the other is the ultimate source of our completeness. Jung teaches us that true relationship begins when we withdraw our projections and start seeing the other as they really are, with lights and shadows, virtues and flaws. Only then can love mature and become a space for mutual growth. And if you are the target of projection, the same principle applies. By realizing you're being loved not exactly for who you are, but for what you represent, you gain the chance to bring awareness to the dynamic. Instead of fueling the illusion, you can guide the relationship onto firmer ground, where there's room for a genuine meeting of two whole individuals, not two unconscious fantasies. Projection, then, is one of the two main reasons people fall in love with you. They see in you what's missing within themselves, the reflection of something lost, desired, or forgotten, and it's that lack that feeds desire, passion, enchantment. When we understand this, we stop being victims of blind love and become protagonists of a more lucid love, where the mirror stops distorting and begins to reflect clearly. If the first reason someone falls in love with you is the projection of an idealized image, the second aspect delves even deeper: fascination with the shadow. For Jung, the shadow represents all personality aspects that have been repressed, ignored, or rejected for not fitting the image we wish to maintain. It's everything we judge as inadequate, ugly, unacceptable, but that still exists in our unconscious. Paradoxically, it's precisely this shadow that can become a powerful magnet for romantic attraction. Often, people fall in love with you because you embody something they don't allow themselves to live. Maybe you're free where they feel trapped, bold where they hold back, vulnerable where they've learned to be tough. Your presence awakens in them a repressed part that longs for recognition and expression. In this context, love emerges as an unconscious movement of reunion with what was lost in themselves. You become, without realizing it, the channel through which their shadow seeks to emerge into the light. This attraction to the shadow doesn't mean we're drawn only to the negative. The shadow contains not just destructive impulses or socially unacceptable traits, but also undeveloped potentials, stifled talents, suppressed desires, unrecognized strengths. That's why love often feels contradictory. We can feel admiration and fear, enchantment and discomfort toward the beloved. This emotional mix indicates the shadow is at play, and that the relationship holds the potential to be deeply transformative if approached with awareness. It's common that, in the early moments of passion, this attraction to the shadow manifests as enchantment or fascination. The person sees in you a mystery, something unusual they can't quite name, yet intensely drawn to. However, over time, if the relationship doesn't evolve to a more conscious level, that very trait that charmed can start to bother. What was freedom becomes irresponsibility. What was intensity turns into drama. What was spontaneity now seems instability. This happens because once the shadow begins to surface, it demands integration, and that's a process that can be painful and uncomfortable. The challenge here is to understand that when we fall in love with the shadow, we're not really loving the other as they are, but responding to an unconscious call to reclaim parts of ourselves left behind. The other becomes a portal for us to become more whole. This is the beauty and complexity of relationships that touch the shadow. They confront us with what we need to face, even if it challenges us. If you notice someone is in love with you for this reason, your presence may be activating a blind spot in their psyche. This isn't your responsibility, but it's an opportunity. By recognizing the role you play in this dynamic, you can choose whether to keep fueling this unconscious projection or to open space for a more authentic relationship where the other can courageously face their shadow. From Jung's perspective, to love is in large part to embrace the task of becoming whole, and this necessarily involves encountering the shadow. When someone falls in love with you because you connect them to something they've repressed, love arises as a chance for healing, but only if it's welcomed with lucidity, maturity, and a willingness to dive into what's difficult. Fascination with the shadow, therefore, is the second great reason why people fall in love with you. And perhaps by realizing this, you begin to wonder, which parts of me attract so strongly? What in me resonates with what the other rejects in themselves? And most importantly, am I willing to sustain this mirror? Or do I choose to protect myself from relationships that don't come from a real encounter? Jung's analytical psychology invites us to see love from a radically different perspective than common sense offers. Instead of treating relationships as a search for completeness in the other, Jung proposes that the true purpose of love is tied to individuation, the path by which the individual becomes their essential self. In this sense, romantic relationships aren't just emotional or physical encounters, but archetypal experiences with the potential to transform us profoundly if lived consciously. When someone falls in love with you because they see in you a bridge to their own inner fulfillment, what's at stake isn't just desire, but an archetypal need for psychic evolution. Love then becomes a mirror that reveals both what's missing and what needs to be developed within each of us. This dynamic turns the bond into something greater than the sum of two individuals. It becomes a sacred space where wounds are exposed, fears confronted, and potentials awakened. Individuation is the movement of integrating internal polarities, conscious and unconscious, reason and emotion, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. True love, in this context, is that which facilitates this integration. That's why the most significant relationship in someone's life often isn't the easiest or most stable, but the one that provokes crises, internal upheavals, and personal revolutions. These transformative relationships are painful, yet essential. They reveal who we truly are, not who we wish to be. When the other appears as a symbol of something you lack, whether courage, freedom, tenderness, or intensity, they're embodying a psychic aspect of you that hasn't yet been lived. Through the relationship, this part can be activated and, if there's willingness, integrated into consciousness. To love, then, is an alchemical work. The friction of differences generates heat, and this heat produces transformation. It's as if love were a symbolic furnace where unconscious aspects are purified and reintegrated. But this journey isn't guaranteed. Many relationships get lost in idealization, projection, and resistance to change. For love to become a catalyst for individuation, both partners must be open to self-knowledge. It takes courage to face the discomfort that arises when the other reveals our contradictions, limits, and wounds. Loving isn't just about enjoying the other's presence, but also about holding the mirror they represent, and not shattering it when the reflected image becomes hard to face. At the same time, loving someone in the process of individuation is an intense experience. You feel like you're witnessing the emergence of a new identity, a kind of psychological rebirth. This demands respect for the other's time and space, patience with periods of silence, and understanding in the face of emotional swings. Love, in this case, isn't control or possession, but presence, a commitment to stand by as the other finds themselves. If someone falls in love with you because you represent unconsciously a starting point for their individuation journey, you may notice they feel energized, inspired, and at the same time challenged in your presence. Your energy drives them beyond their own limits, questioning their beliefs and patterns. You become a living symbol of something greater, calling them inward. This is one of the deepest forms of love, and also one of the most demanding. Transformative relationships aren't those that keep us comfortable, but those that invite us to the courage of being who we are. When someone falls in love with you for this reason, the relationship becomes a portal. Crossing it doesn't lead to a fairy tale ending, but to the beginning of a journey of depth and truth. And that, though challenging, is what makes love truly sacred. Recognizing that people fall in love with you, driven by projections and attraction to the shadow, isn't cause for alarm or guilt. It's an invitation to consciousness. Jung's analytical psychology shows us the unconscious is always active, shaping our choices, relationships, and affections. The difference between a life guided by unconscious repetition and one lived with authenticity lies in the ability to observe these forces, name them, and integrate them. When you understand the two main reasons why someone falls in love with you, a new possibility emerges: to love with truth, without illusions, without escape, with your feet on the ground and your heart awake. The first step toward this awareness is self-observation. Ask yourself, what in me tends to attract others? Is it my freedom, my emotional intensity, my generosity, or perhaps my unpredictability, my silence, my mystery? These traits aren't just isolated qualities, but signs of what you symbolize in the other's unconscious. You may be seen as the embodiment of something that person lacks and therefore deeply desires. This attraction is legitimate, but it needs to be recognized as part of an unconscious process, not as a complete reflection of who you are. Awareness begins to take root when we can perceive the presence of projection. Instead of responding automatically to someone's admiration or desire, we can ask, who are they really seeing in me? Is it my true essence, or an image representing something of theirs? This question isn't meant to invalidate love, but to clear it of distortions. True love exists only between two people who see each other beyond projections. That doesn't mean projection must disappear completely. It will always be present to some degree, but that it must be illuminated by consciousness. The same applies to the fascination born from the shadow. When we notice someone is drawn to aspects of us that activate their repressed content, we can act with psychic responsibility. This means not deliberately feeding the idealization, nor assuming the role the other projects. It means holding your truth, even if it frustrates expectations. It means saying, what you see in me may be a part of you that's asking to be lived. When this insight is embraced with maturity, the relationship can evolve from unconscious enchantment to conscious partnership. At the heart of this transformation is the concept of individuation. When love becomes a space where both partners are committed to their own process of self-knowledge, the relationship stops being a place of escape or illusory completeness. Instead, It becomes an arena for mutual growth. This requires not only emotional courage, but also spiritual humility, acknowledging that the other isn't here to save us, but to mirror us. This awareness also applies to yourself. You too often fall in love with projections and shadows. When you feel intense attraction to someone, pause and reflect. What does this person awaken in me that was dormant? What fascinates me about them? And what does that reveal about me? In this case, love becomes a soul laboratory, a space where we experiment with, confront, and integrate hidden aspects of our being. By recognizing the two reasons people fall in love with you, you not only protect yourself from unbalanced relationships, but also create the foundation for more authentic, romantic experiences. You begin to attract not because of the fantasy you represent, but because of the truth you sustain. And truth, even when uncomfortable, is the only possible foundation for lasting and transformative love. To love with awareness is therefore more than a spiritual ideal, it's a psychic practice. It's the commitment to see the other as they are, and to allow them to see you with the same depth. It's shedding masks, abandoning roles, and finally meeting as two whole, imperfect, real beings. This is love that liberates, because it's born from truth, not need. Love is a mysterious force, but not a chaotic one. It follows deep psychic laws that Jung helped decode. When we understand that people fall in love with us primarily for two reasons, because they project hidden parts of themselves onto us, or because they see in us a call to their own transformation, we gain power. Not the power to control the other, but the power to love with awareness, clarity, and truth. You're not here to fill anyone else's void, nor to play roles that aren't yours. Your value doesn't lie in the image projected onto you, but in the presence you sustain. And when you understand these two reasons, you can build more authentic relationships, where love isn't an escape, but an encounter. If this content spoke to your soul, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we dive into the unconscious to live more consciously. And don't go yet. The video next to this one will expand your vision of relationships and the power of the inner journey. Remember, loving with truth is also a path of healing, and it starts now with you.